Well, hello, welcome back to another episode of Real Talk and ELT. Oh, I'm just clicking around. I'm trying to get my notes in the right place because otherwise it's just going to go off the tracks really quickly. And speaking of that, topic of today's episode, I should say, is creating student-centered lessons without losing control. Because we've all heard it, right? We've all had, I'm sure we've had comments from other teachers, our coordinators, directors, mentors, things like that. And they're like, make it student centered, let them lead, step back and let the learning happen. You're like, yeah, okay. How do I do that? Because when you do that, sometimes you give them a group task, you set it up, and then you just try not to interrupt. You stand back and you just watch the disaster slowly unfold, right? So this advice sometimes doesn't come with practical steps on like how to actually do this, right? So we don't want them getting off topic. We don't want one student dominating. Oh my goodness, nightmare here. Some chords and things like that. You know what I mean? Okay, I got it. One student is clearly dominant and just wants to talk over the peers instead of collaborating with peers. And then you've got to step in, and then you feel like, oh, I really kind of lost control of that. And the students really weren't, kind of in the lead and control. And then you start questioning yourself, existential crisis on what does student-centered actually mean. Instead of just having the teacher disappeared, maybe you need some helpful steps on how to make things student-centered. So you don't just disappear. Student-centered does not mean teacher absent. It means teacher strategic. So let's think of it that way. The goal is not necessarily, well, the goal is to say less. I mean, because then if they've got control of it, that's great. But what you do need to do is you need to make sure that you make room for students to have more opportunities to engage, explore, and express themselves. You're not giving up control. You're just kind of shifting how you use it and how you see things being run. Again, anecdotal, my experience, why do student-centered lessons usually fall apart? I think there's kind of two main reasons. I wrote them down. One, there's no clear structure holding the activity together. You're missing kind of like the skeleton of it, and then it just deviates wildly. And two, one of the most important ones, I think, is that maybe this should be number one, is that there's no training for students on how to take ownership. Most students have lived in a teacher-dominated world in their academic careers. I mean, look at nowadays. Nowadays, at schools, we want to say that they're that they're changing and there's so much collaboration and we have lots of projects nowadays and so yeah, the teacher, it's still all teacher led. If you go into the school system, at least the school systems, a lot of the things that I've seen in the US, in South America, primarily Brazil, it is still all very, very traditional. So how do we get a lesson to be student-centered without spiraling out of control, especially if you have time constraints or any kind of other constraints because you're doing some sort of, I don't know, program or something like that. So here we go. One, set clear and visible goals. It's not just slapping an activity there and saying, all right, you've got 5 minutes to talk. What? No. They're going to talk about whatever. They're going to start on topic, but they don't have any communicative purpose in that. So it's not just have the discussion. It's let's come to this group decision, or let's prepare 3 ideas so that you can report on them. Let's see who, it's the age-old find someone who, and then you have to report if your friend or your classmate is similar to you or has an experience or something like that. Like they need a purpose. You can't just be like, all right, go talk. Like have a discussion is not the same as come to a group decision. on something, or a consensus, or list something out, or propose a solution. So 1, very clear, very visible goals. Put them on the board with those discussion questions, whatever you got going on. 2, give roles and responsibilities. This is a good little classroom management trick. If you've got dominant people or shy students, weaker students that tend to be a little bit shy, don't contribute as much, assign people responsibilities. So if they've got 10 minutes to go and talk, well, 10 minutes is quite a bit of time. So we're going to have a timekeeper, and we want to make sure that everybody's contributions are 90 seconds or less so that everyone gets to contribute. So have a person be a timekeeper. Then there's a person that's going to be a summarizer. At the end, make sure that you give the summarizing points, because the person that's coming back to summarize is going to have to report those. Question asker. So if something is not clear, their peers are saying something back and forth, then you have to ask the question, sorry, could you repeat that? What do you mean by that? Etc. Or if they need to move forward with the question so that they get through all the questions, then sure, there can be a question asker. And finally, the last tip, stay present but off stage. Teachers need to learn how to disappear, to be honest. We need to be front and center in some parts, but then we also need to learn how to disappear. So be off stage. How do you do that? Well, you're going to monitor them. If you're in a regular classroom, just walk around quietly behind them. Don't get in their faces. You're not doing the activity with them. They're doing the activity. You got to prompt them if necessary. So you have to see when things are kind of going off track so that you can get them back on. Clarify when something's unclear or students aren't communicating well, or you see something going off track. Make sure that you clarify it for them so that they can get back on track. Redirect. Someone has clearly just taken this and gone in a completely different direction, or they just interpreted it in a way that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, so then redirect them. You're still teaching. You're just not interrupting every 15 seconds. Let them do the task. Only if they need assistance, then do you interfere. Don't interrupt students. Let them do what they need to do. You gave them a task, now give them time to go do it. And as always, my constant in advice giving is that you should reflect afterwards. What went well in the task? What are things that they were able to accomplish? Certain aspects of the task that were productive and effective, whether it's instructions or use of technology, or if there was a worksheet that was set up particularly well that really facilitated the activity for them. And what made it hard to stay focused? Did you give them too much time? Did they have undefined roles? Was there a person that was dominating? Do you need to clearly define roles next time? Was the communicative purpose not really communicated that well, so they didn't come back to the main room or to the whole class experience, everybody together? They didn't come back with something useful or what you intended them to come back with. You can ask them these questions too, because that metacognitive reflection, that work of them, do you think you accomplished the task? What things helped you accomplish the task? What things did not help you accomplish the task? That also is very valid, because that's building their skills of, okay, so when I'm given a task, I need to complete the actual task, and how well am I doing that? So here in this, structure and guidance and thoughtful thinking about what's going on and what's happening, that's what makes things more student-centered, where you can throw it to them, set up an activity, give them instructions, and give them time. Give them time to do it. Don't interrupt. Let them work through it. I constantly see teachers interrupting because they're not going fast enough, or that. Listen, you gotta, relax. You got to relax. Students need thinking time, students need clear instructions, and eventually they'll get there. And if they don't have really good self-awareness, I guess I could say, self-awareness of getting tasks done and things like that, then yeah, you're going to have a little bit of an uphill battle in the beginning. But after they start getting into it, then they're going to be kind of pros at like, here's the task, here's what you need to do, go off and do that. So if you've been taking over the reins a little bit too much in class, it's constantly you nominating people, constantly you saying, okay, let's check the answers, let's go through this, let's do this together, and you don't you speak English. Here's the peeves are being pet again. You speak English. You can do these tasks. They're working on it, they're learning. So you got to give them time and you got to give them an opportunity to be able to engage in it. If you're constantly interrupting them, it's not going to be student-centered. Just always in there, like just always talking, interrupting, nominating, eliciting from them. Like, calm down. Let them work through it. If you're working with adults know what you want. It's just that they're struggling to format it in the way that you need it, which is in English because they're still learning the language. Anyways, so try to scaffold things a little bit more, meaning put those little bridges in there. Maybe you have to reflect yourself on clear instructions and what exactly you want them to come back with. Like if you want them to go off in groups and then come back, what exactly do you want them to report to you afterwards? If that's not clear to you, then you shouldn't be setting up that task because you don't even know what you want. So how can you make it clear what the students want? Or what the students, how can you make it clear what you want to the students? Yeah, there, it came out. Eventually it got out. So making things student-centered is not just kind of leaving them and saying, sink or swim, students, good luck. It's not completely disappearing. It's thinking very strategically about how you're going to get things rolling so that they can engage with the activities and they can use the language that they're learning. So those are my ideas on how to create student-centered lessons without losing control. Because you're always there. You're just not necessarily present, constantly talking. All right, good luck with that. And I'll see you next time.